wanted to test other people against Steve Cram to see the comparison between the data. So I volunteered, had all these tests, muscle biopsy, oxygen uptake, lactate threshold, I mean, very expensive tests, didn't cost me a thing. And just like tuning a car, like a Formula 1 car, you put it on a test rig, you can put a human on a test rig, and you can tell them exactly how they're going to perform in any event. Most people, and I have a lot of friends who are runners, shouldn't be runners. A lot of friends of mine are triathletes, they shouldn't be triathletes, because they're just not designed to be triathletes, they're not designed to be runners. But based on these tests, they said, yes, Eric, you can be a good runner, but you have, I think it was 80% or 85% slow twitch muscle fibers, which is ridiculously high. The average is 55 slow twitch, 45% fast twitch. So they said, you've got the physiological capability to run around a 2:15 marathon. A 2:15 marathon, that's pretty fast, but it won't get you in the top 50 in the world. And there's no point dedicating all that time to training and racing if you haven't got a chance of being the best. But they said, if you go to the longer distances, chances are you can maybe get up to maybe the top 10 in the world, maybe. So you have that potential. So my VO2, I think, was 78.7, 78.8, which is good. That's a good baseline, good starting point. So I started off doing the 100k races, if you remember, back on the previous slide. Wasn't enough to finance me as a professional athlete, because even though there were some big 100k races around the world, it doesn't get the media coverage that triathlon does. So one day back in '93, I was watching Transworld Sport, which is equivalent to an ESPN program here, and they showed this triple Ironman, which was the World Championships at the time. Huge crowds. I mean, TF1, TF2, two major French channels covered this. 3 other channels covered it. The Eurosport helicopter dedicated a helicopter to the race for the whole weekend. I got a huge press coverage, plus there's a decent amount of prize money. So I thought, okay, well, I'll make the transition to triathlon, and did the first one in '93, got 3rd, '94, got 5th, that was a bad year because I hadn't fully made the transition there, I was still doing 100k races. '95, I won the World Championships, and then heard about this crazy race called the Decatriathlon. I thought this might be a good calling card for my sponsors, because everybody knows what an Ironman is, and if you win a race that is 10 times the distance, then people are going to be interested in interviewing you, and that's what sponsors are interested in, is public relations. I used to have a PR rep throughout the year, and we'd go to do interviews, and after winning this race, the 10 times Ironman, just to give you the distances, it's 38k swimming non-stop, 1,800k bike non-stop, and then a 422k run. So you sleep between 4 and 6 in the morning, 2 hours sleep a night, maybe an hour and a half, and that's it. The rest of the time you're either swimming, cycling, or running. That was the Decatriathlon. So she had introduced me as the guy who won the 10 times Ironman, and on the back of that I'd get magazine articles in GQ, 97 GQ magazine, Loaded, FHM, a lot of other magazines, and that keeps the sponsors happy, because the amount of coverage that you get in one of these magazines equates to a certain amount of money that it would cost them to otherwise promote their product. So the PR agent was there to make sure that when they took photographs, that they didn't edit the Red Bull logo, or they didn't edit out the Timex logo. And I asked one of these reporters, I said, okay, well, how much is this article that you're going to publish in GQ worth to my sponsors? And they said it's probably around $12,000 to $14,000 just for this 3-page spread. And at the time, that was almost as much as they were paying me a year. So they were getting a very good deal out of this, which is usually the case with sponsorship. So, allowed me to go to some great places, some of my favourite places in the world. The Big Island, that's the Red Road down in the south, near South Point. And Ultraman is a 3-day triathlon around the Big Island of Hawaii. 10k swim, 150k bike on the first day, second day 261k bike up to Harvey, and then you run 52 miles through the lava fields back to Kona. So it's a bit of an endurance test, but you're living the life of a professional athlete. There's only one thing that's better than that, and that's to be an astronaut. So I retired, actually didn't actually retire. When I was a professional athlete, I should say that I wasn't what most people consider to be a professional athlete, because I'll completely crack up if all I did was swim, bike and run and rest. So I was actually doing this job as a professional athlete at the same time I was doing my PhD. So in '96, in '96 I got a $50,000 grant from the European Space Agency to go over to Germany to work at the Institute for Space Medicine in Cologne. So the German Space Agency is obviously affiliated with the German Space Agency, European Space Agency. The Institute for Space Medicine is next door to the Astronaut Training Center in Cologne, so I got to know a few of the astronauts there, like Reinhold Ewald. I don't know if you remember him. He was the guy who was on board Mir when it burst into flames, so he was an interesting guy to talk to. So I was in Germany for 2 years doing my PhD studies at the Institute for Space Medicine, which is a great place to do a PhD. At the same time, I was still doing my professional triathlon, so I was effectively doing 2 jobs. So 35 hours a week training, plus the I guess it was about 35 hours a week dedicated to the PhD. And during that time, I was a subject on a parabolic flight, it was a 20-second parabolic flight campaign in Bretigny, France, which is a suburb of Paris, just about 20-30 km south of Paris. So it was in a Caravelle. This is one of the last flights they used in the Caravelle. They then made the transition to the Airbus. And there was 30 parabola over the Sea of Biscay, which is to the west of France. And that was a lot of fun, except for the vomiting and everything else. So in the parabolic flight, we had the chief test pilot of France and Jean-Pierre Hanier. He went on a Mir mission. He's now married to Claudie Dessays, who's another French astronaut, and he was the other pilot. So we had probably the leading French astronaut as the pilot and the chief test pilot of the French Air Force flying the aircraft. At the end of the cabin, you have a countdown and a G meter. So the countdown is the countdown to the next insertion, so the next pull-up phase of the parabola. And they come on the intercom and they say, okay, pull up in 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and then you pull up, pull 2G, and then there's another counter that counts down to the insertion. That's the parabola. And everybody looks forward to that because you've got your 22, 24 seconds of 0G. Now for the first 10G, we were strapped into our seats because we had cannulas in our arms because they were measuring hormones during the parabolic flight. And it's very disconcerting to see people doing this when you're still sitting in your seat. So we were pretty violently ill. And what happens in between each parabola, the orbitics team, which is these people in blue suits, they come up and down the cabin and they collect all your sick bags. That's all they do, they just collect sick bags in between each parabola. And after 10 parabola, we were allowed to fly around the cabin, and it's just a great feeling. Euphoria is probably the closest way you can describe it. And every once in a while, people would get carried away and they'd be too close to the ceiling of the cabin, and they would just completely forget about the countdown to the insertion. Okay, that's when it goes from 0G to 2G, like that. It's not gradual, it's instantaneous. And there's one guy who was actually almost knocked unconscious because he was near the ceiling when they went into the recovery. So he went from 0G to 2G in a split second. So that was 160 pounds of his body weight crashing to the floor, and he was rather upset. So that's a great experience. And then at the end of my PhD studies, this is during the write-up phase, so the 6 months that I spent writing up my PhD, I was also training for this race, which is that's as far as it goes. It doesn't get any further than this. This is going to be my last race as a professional. So what better way to go out than in the toughest endurance race there is, which is Race Across America, which is a 5,000k bike race from the west coast to the east coast. And this started back in '83. This is a great way to prepare for a long duration flight, really, because on a long duration flight you'll be exercising for 3 hours a day, at least 4 hours a day, just to make sure your bones don't disintegrate by the time you get to Mars. So I actually wrote an article about running to Mars, saying that they should select astronauts who run 100 miles a week because they increase their bone density to such a degree that they can afford to lose more. And one of the exercise ergometers that you'll have on board, in addition to the treadmill, will obviously be a bike ergometer. And like I said, this is great training. So this race took place in July '99. I think I was trying to become the first Canadian to actually finish the race, but there was another Canadian in this race who finished ahead of me, so he became the first Canadian. Because my crew, 2/3 of my crew, mutinied 600 miles from the finish because they cracked up. They couldn't take it anymore. It was too stressful. And that's common with crews. Fortunately, I had my brother and my